Jeff pointed out, I have been a volunteer with the American Cancer Society now for 9 months, doing as part of their what's called the Road to Recovery program. Jeff will talk about that, but I get the honor of driving cancer patients to their appointments to make sure that they make that. And it's my pleasure to introduce Jeff Molby. Did I get it right? I'm very conscious of mispronouncing of last names. Who's a Rotarian from Caro, Michigan, where he's been a volunteer for the American Cancer Society's Relay for Life program for several years now. He's a self-described minimalist who loves to travel, and so he decided to sell everything and set off on a 2-year bike tour around the country in support of people to get their cancer treatment, get to their cancer treatment appointments. He's a wonderful advocate for the Road to Recovery program, so it's my pleasure and honor to welcome Jeff to tell us more about his story.
So I've pedaled 6,296 miles so far. But I'm just getting started because all of that is nothing compared to the 10 or 20 miles that stand in between some people and the treatments that could save their lives. We talk about the research and cures and all this all the time, but none of that means anything if somebody can't get to the appointment. And our transportation system works pretty good for most of us most of the time, but some people get left behind. And that's even more true when they're being battered by the cost and intensity and duration of a fight with cancer. I have this crazy belief that everybody deserves to get the recommended treatment on the recommended schedule. And that schedule is pretty important with cancer. You've got to stay on the regimen. So the American Cancer Society agrees as well, and so they have this program called Road to Recovery, which helps bridge those transportation gaps. It's been around since the early 80s. It's helped countless people. It works a lot like a slow version of Uber, except all the drivers are volunteers. The rides are totally free to the patients, and the goal is to save some lives. It's done wonders. The problem is that it's been way short on drivers since the pandemic. And right now, more than half of all the requests that come in have to be denied because we just don't have somebody available in that area on that day. I'm an optimistic guy, so I think we can fix that. As you all well know, our theme for the year is to create hope in the world. Well, if you've ever been to an ACS event, you know that word hope is at the center of everything they do. There's always hope that the next batch of research will be a big step forward. We hope that people will go get screened in time. We hope that a biopsy comes back negative. We hope that insurance companies will cover the doctor's treatment plan, that employers will be understanding all the time somebody needs to take off. I have a friend back home, she's on her 3rd bout with cancer right now, and she gets up every day with the hope that she can see her daughter graduate. And she just finished her sophomore year, so that's still a long road. We do everything we can, and then we hope. My family was very fortunate. My dad's colon cancer was caught early, and the surgery went so smoothly that I honestly took it for granted. It wasn't until I got to know another family that had the opposite experience. A 35-year-old father at 2, diagnosed stage 4. They did everything they could for 2 years. It wasn't enough. I met Billy's high school sweetheart a year later, and I saw close up as the mother of a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old grappled with the word widow and tried to figure out what the hell had happened to her happily ever after and how they were ever going to figure out a new way forward. And it all really opened my eyes to how lucky we had been. butts. You probably don't get too many people coming in here talking about butts. But I can't stand in front of a microphone without talking about this. So, are any of you over the age of 45? Yeah. Pretty much all of us, right? And so if you haven't had a colonoscopy recently, you're probably due. So quit putting it off, talk to your doctor. If you're over the age of 75, then you're probably in the clear. But again, it's your personal history that matters at that point. So just talk to your doctor and see what they say. My brothers and I all had ours recently. None of us had any symptoms, but we had that family history, so we had to start a little early. They found a cancerous polyp in my little brother. The big one is my little brother. The technology now is amazing. They were able to just cauterize it right there, so all was well. And he had his checkup a few weeks ago, and he's good to go. But I can't help but think how that story might have been different if he had put it off for a few years. And I come from a long line of procrastinators, so that was a very real possibility. We always think about the research, but there are things we can do today to save lives by reducing that procrastination, reducing the stigma, just talking about this stuff, and reducing the transportation barriers. So when my son Oliver went off to school last year, I found myself with an empty nest, and according to some people, perhaps a midlife crisis. And so I got on my bike and I set off with the hope that I could find some drivers along the way. Here's the bike. That is not the kind of bike that any sane person would try to take across the country, I'll tell you that. Along the way, it's been called a Walmart bike, a bike-shaped object. And one cyclist just kind of looked at me and said, "Well, that's a really bold choice, Jeff." What can I say? Sometimes I get a crazy idea and I just run with it. It was October, it was getting cold, I needed to get a move on. That was the bike I had, so I loaded it up and I went and figured it would let me down eventually, but I'd just cross that bridge when I got there. Oliver named the bike, he's been watching a lot of Viking shows lately, and he named the bike Birger the Swift. Birger comes from Old Norse mythology, meaning to help, to serve, and to protect, which sounded very sweet. The swift part didn't fit, though. I was not setting any speed records on this journey, so we settled on Birger the Determined. Well, Birger is no longer with us. He died in the line of duty outside of Orlando. I didn't prepare enough for any of this, so the gear changed constantly over those first few weeks, and at various points there were a ridiculous number of bungee cords holding everything together on the back of the bike. Well, I'd gotten it down to one bungee, but that day as I was packing up my groceries, I forgot to hook it back into place. And so it was dangling off the side of the bike, and about a half mile down the road it got caught in the chain. Went around a dozen times before I knew what hit me, and there it is. That is not supposed to be there. That's supposed to be attached. It wasn't good. It wasn't worth fixing. So Birger's time of death was December 4th at 3:42 p.m. Oliver tells me that his noble spirit lives on in Valhalla. More importantly, his replacement is a proper touring bike, so I feel a lot safer now. But Birger gave his life for this cause because I think maybe there's somebody in this room that has time to give a ride or two each month. Like, that's really all it takes. It's just an occasional thing. And, like I say, it's like Uber. You see what's needed in the area, and when you see something that's a fit, you raise your hand and you help that person out. And maybe you do the whole round trip. Maybe you just do one way and somebody else gets the other half. The goal is to have enough drivers so that nobody has to do anything too hard. Right? I met the coordinator for Jackson County last year. She's a retired rural mail carrier, so no stranger to driving all over the countryside. She is currently holding the program together for her county and 3 surrounding counties. Like, that's amazing. She's a saint, but that's not sustainable, right? She needs help, and so do the drivers out here. So if you think that's something you can do, I set up ChemoRiders.org to kind of encompass everything that I'm doing. The program is run by the American Cancer Society, so you can also just go directly there. But if you go through my site, there are links that'll take you to the exact right page, and then I can kind of keep in touch with you too and help you get set up if you're running any snags. I find it endlessly weird that I spend so much time talking about this program and I've never had the honor of driving it. I've never done it. It's not something that fits with my weird bike life, right? It's probably true for most of you as well, that especially if you're busy midweek, that's not going to be a good fit. But there are other things you can do. The coordinator could use a hand with some of the team building type stuff, keeping everybody on the same page, keep the team running at full speed. And so if you're good at that, we could use your help. Even just, sharing Facebook posts and spreading, there's a huge awareness on the issue on this one. Most people have never even thought about this program. You just kind of assume that something handles this need, and sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, right? So just spreading the word. If you know anybody in the medical community, they haven't all gotten the memo that the program's back up and running, so there's an awareness issue there. And not everybody that's going through cancer right now knows that this resource is available. So if you know anybody, just awareness across the board. And if you know somebody who might be a good driver, even better. I'm still getting used to the slideshow. I did not really talk about this with my family much before I left. And after a few weeks, my mom was watching my videos, and she eventually decided that, especially in the winter time, she had some free time. She can't golf and she can't go camping and all that stuff. So she gave it a shot, and she gave her first ride in November. Has not stopped talking about it since. And she's recruited 3 of her friends to drive as well. Like, that word of mouth is just priceless, right? So if nothing else, maybe you think of somebody and you find an excuse to tell them about the crazy guy biking around the country on a Walmart bike, and see if maybe that plants a seed. Any of y'all cyclists?
Kind of, yeah.
All right. If you're on Strava, give me a follow. It's for tracking exercises and stuff. Yeah. I've noticed an interesting thing along the way. When I ask that question, I don't usually get a clear yes. It usually sounds more like, well, yeah, but just around town, not like you, right? Like there's always that tendency to compare the way I do it versus what a serious cyclist does. And I chuckle every time because I have had all of those thoughts a million times throughout my life. There have been so many times where, like, a year ago, I was just a dude riding around a small town on a Walmart bike picking up groceries. And, so I was definitely not serious. But the more I talk to people, though, I see that with cancer, too, where somebody's experience went very smooth, they may hesitate to think of themselves as cancer survivors. And I think that's all hogwash. If you're out there spinning pedals, you're a cyclist. I don't care how. There's lots of ways to do it. And if you've ever sat in a doctor's office and heard those words, you have cancer, you know what it's like for your life to flash before your eyes. And even if the very next word out of the doctor's mouth were incredibly reassuring, even if the treatment plan went perfectly, that danger was still real, and you had to grapple with all of that, right? So I mention all this because I think it applies to volunteers as well. Giving somebody a ride, it's not flashy, right? You're never gonna, it's like, Chuck's probably never gonna be on the 6 o'clock news, right? It's not like pulling somebody out of a burning building. Well, no, if we can get you in front of a camera, we will, man. That's awareness. But it's not flashy, right? It's just one of those little things. If you can help, if a person can't stay on their treatment plan, then the doctor's got to come up with a plan B that's more practical. And that plan B is probably not going to be as high a percentage of successfulness as the plan A would have been. So anything we can do to support somebody and keep them on plan A, that's life-saving work that pays off. In Pensacola, I met this gentleman who's also a driver. He drives like once or twice a week. He's been doing it for 10 years. And when I met him, he had just recently given his 504th ride. I'm no statistician, but I'm pretty sure there are people alive today because Buzz Wyndham made sure they got to their appointment on time. And any help you can offer, that's going to save lives too. Here in Hennepin County, so far this year, there we go, 541 rides have been given, and all by volunteers, which is amazing, and y'all are doing better than most places right now, so that's fantastic. But we still had another 255 that we had to say no to, and it's only June, right? I think of all the health challenges that are so big that they really take giant organizational action. And we know that from polio, right? We do all the little things. We have our happy dollars, we have our fundraisers, and we do everything we can. And then we just kind of have to hope that the right things happen on the other side of the world for that impact to actually be made. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But this is about as personal as it gets, right? These are your neighbors. Cancer's right here with us, and often all they need is a ride. So one person can just have a huge impact on somebody's lives. So if you think you can help, please ChemoRiders.org or come talk to me afterwards. So thank you guys.
Any questions?
Jeff, I just wanted to make one point. The need is potentially very important, especially if the city of Minneapolis doesn't figure out who we're in with. Because that's, if somebody can't get a ride, oftentimes that's their alternative.
Yeah.
And if that alternative's not there, it's gonna be a real challenge for people.
So Uber and Lyft isn't terribly good here?
No, it might get kicked out of.
Oh, wow.
I thought they resolved it.
They have this?
Resolved, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay, my mistake.
There
I
was a
thought they just-
dispute about
Okay.
driver
They were
pay.
trying
thought
to
they just pushed it
legislate
off.
higher rates and Uber and Lyft threatened to leave.
Okay. Wow.
No,
All right.
the state overruled.
Oh,
Passed a
okay.
law to override
Well, then
it.
I should know better.
But that's a good point. That's a
Yeah.
good point.
And so I guess, what is the alternative? Uber, Lyft, but then is that funded through other organizations?
No, they're just paying
They
out
have
of
to pay
pocket.
for it.
There's each case is very situational dependent, right? The alternative might be that a family member takes them, but then they have to call in sick that day and miss a shift to work, or do it, pour another cup of coffee and do it when they're already sleep deprived and just hope that doesn't backfire. Like it usually gets done somehow, but there's so much of cancer that we can't really help with, right? The person just has to slog through it themselves. This is one of those easy things that if whatever the situation is, if we can take it off their plate, then that's a win across the board. So they manage usually, but it's often not good. Yes.
I'm curious about the beginning of this journey for you.
Yeah.
And did you really just get on a bike and go, or did you have conversations with American Cancer Society before you, how did that all
Yeah, so I've been involved with Relay for Life for a few years, and so I had some local connections for that. And for anybody that's not familiar, that's basically just a one-day event that fundraises and builds community. So like I had some experience through that, and I had contact with a staff partner through that. But this was all wildly outside of that framework. So like, I was like, Trisha, I'm thinking about doing this thing. Can you put me in touch with some people? And she was like, yeah, okay, that sounds amazing. Wow, but like she probably didn't actually believe I was going to follow through on it. So it took a while. Like it wasn't until I was on the road and actually in Florida talking to people that it started the pieces really started to come together on that end. And, so more and more so each week I have a lot of wonderful contacts now. But at first it was just, they had made me aware of this program in the past, and eventually it made sense that it was something I could have an impact with. And so it was like, okay, time to learn, Jeff. And I'll just figure it out as I go. And so far, I haven't been corrected too many times on the things I'm saying. So I guess I'm mostly getting it right. Just a lot of winging it.
And have you had newfound connections within a cycling community in the different places that you've gone or along the way that's helped?
Yeah, I haven't had time to meet as many cyclists as I had thought and wanted to, because originally that like multi-pronged, try to bring all of my different circles together, and the cycling community is the one part of that it's a little more on the optional side. Like if I want to involve Rotary, I got to schedule that in advance, right? And so like that was all on the calendar, and then the cycling, I make those connections as I have free time and feel like joining a local ride and getting in a few extra miles. And so I've done it a little bit, hopefully more going forward.
Sorry, one more thing, and then I'll be done. So the theme for June is fellowships.
Okay.
And I would imagine that there is a Rotarian cyclist fellowship. I hope that they know what you're doing.
There
If
is,
not,
yeah.
okay.
I met in St. Louis. I was vaguely aware of fellowships, but I hadn't given it too much thought in general. When I got to St. Louis, somebody put me in touch with Tom Drennan, who is the vice president of Rotary's cycling fellowship. And so yes, as of like a month ago, I am now a member of the fellowship.
So I'm just curious, logistically, so you're in the middle of that trip to
Yeah.
Joyce, and do you have a pretty rigid timeline? Because you have other clubs that you're meeting with across the map.
Yeah, so I had the rough sketch of the path is based on the seasons, right? I'm a migratory bird. I'm trying to be south in the winter and north in the summer, and then from there, and I wanted to get to Little Rock for the eclipse. So like those were the overarching things, and then it was a matter of connecting with clubs along the way and getting on calendars. And what was the?
I was kind of curious how rigid your schedule is.
Okay, yeah.
What's your goal to finish this by?
So season-wise, I'm going to spend this winter in Texas and the following winter down in like San Diego. So that needs to happen just seasonally. It did not occur to me, this was really naive, I suppose, just how far in advance I'd have to plan to get on Rotary calendars. And so I can tell you where I'll be next March. Like I responded to a text a couple hours ago about a November meeting that there was a conflict with one of their things, and so like I gotta find a new date for that. Like that is all way more rigid than I ever imagined a bike ride around the country would be. But yeah.
So you're heading south from here?
Yeah. No, so I'm gonna get all the way up to the tip of the UP.
So you're going north.
And then I'm going to take a month off. I've got July carved out. We have our family reunion and stuff like that. So I'm just going to take a break. And then I'll pick it back up in August. And then ride down through Chicago and Indianapolis and make my way to Texas.
I'm just curious if you were familiar with Ride to Bride.
Yes.
So that'd be a nice PR thing as well. Because every time it goes in, there's always media
Yeah.
covering different stunts, I guess, that people are doing. But
Yeah, totally.
it's
Yeah.
PR stunt.
Absolutely. And going to your question about the cycling community, like I had figured I would be able to work some of that stuff in. along the way. And so far, the only ride I've been able to join, other than just a couple little community rides, was in Muscatine, Iowa. I happened to pull up to the YMCA just as there was a group of people huddled underneath a canopy waiting for a storm to pass, but they all had bikes. So I was like, what are you guys doing and can I play too? And it turned out it was the Special Olympics torch ride that they were doing. And so like I was able to jump in and ride with them for a little bit. But yeah, there's so many good events out there that I like keep missing. And even just trails. Lots of good trails out there that are not going in the direction that I want to go. So it's like, oh, well, maybe next time, Yeah. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention before I forget. I sent out the business cards. On the back of those, I've been starting very recently to collect. As everywhere I go, I hear people tell their stories of their connection to cancer and people in their minds and in their hearts. And my memory is only so good. So often I miss, it only lasts so long. So I started a tribute page so that I could kind of collect all of those people and their memories. And so if there's somebody on your mind, please jot it on the back, and then I can add that to the list. So, thank you.